is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of the singing of birds is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land.
They're in a win-now mode. As long as you got Justin Verlander, you got Miguel Cabrera, you got Victor Martinez, still productive players. You have a window with these great players that's still open.
Back, track, oh, that's the ball game! It's a 3-home run game for J.D. Martinez. A walk-off home run, James McCann.
Thanks to a myriad of injuries and inconsistent bullpen play, it's been an uneven start to the season for the Detroit Tigers. However, as the team continues to round into shape health-wise, the question remains, how high is the ceiling for this squad as they make one final run at postseason glory with this veteran group? For some answers, I spent Monday chatting with Dennis Fithian of 97.1 The Ticket, who joined me to give me a status update on everything relating to the Old English D. So Dennis, first of all, we want to take some time and welcome you to the Two-Man Advantage podcast, and we're excited to talk some Tigers baseball with you this afternoon.
Well, I'm equally as excited to be here, and anybody that wants to talk Tiger baseball, I'm always ready to go.
So when we look at the Tigers, Dennis, obviously they've had a myriad of injuries this season, which has affected their playing on the field. With that in mind, can you just give me your general impressions on how Detroit has started their season?
Yeah, well, I think since they're 500 and you include those injuries, I think they've hung in there. I mean, they haven't lost sight like some teams that you look at and you say they're already out of it. The Tigers, they haven't buried themselves with their April, but having said that, here they are in 2 weeks into May. I go back to the first month, and even when they were winning some games, it kind of felt like they were losing. Even going back to opening day, blowing the game and then coming back and winning it. Then, they played at Cleveland in that first series after what happened last year, only winning 4 out of the 18 games that they played against them. And, they got the big lead. They're giving up a grand slam on a Friday. I mean, they got the win, but after that game, it was hard to be like, okay, well, everything's going right. And even when they scored, what was that game? They scored 19 runs against Seattle at home. I mean, the Tigers had to use more pitchers, and it was like, even when they scored 19 runs, it almost felt like it just wasn't going to hold up because of one area of their team there at the end. I mean, they were hanging on, and you know what? You just knew that wasn't going to be sustainable. But I look, and if you make predictions before the season, nobody was talking about, I didn't know who Jim Ducey was. I didn't know who Hicks was. I mean, I knew who Avila was, but if somebody said that, he was going to be their MVP of April, I would have laughed. So those guys saved them early on, and then, Fulmer didn't have any sophomore jinx, and, Boyd looked pretty good. Those were their saving graces early on, and, now they've got a new team. They've got a new team, a new lineup now with what looks like everybody healthy.
And when we look at the way they started this past road trip, obviously they should have won all 3 games in Oakland, and Brad Ausmus really didn't have a choice but to bench K-Rod out of the closer position. So I'm just wondering if you can give me an idea on the state of the bullpen with Justin Wilson in his new role and K-Rod sort of taking a back seat to his normal position on the team.
Well, the interview was going pretty good until you start bringing up the bullpen.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of, that's it. Now, everybody's good mood's over, but now, they're going fine fine right now, but when you got 7 guys in there, K-Rod was, like I talked about from opening day, I mean, that was right out of the gate. Brad Ausmus using him, bringing him out for a 4-out save, and he's giving up grand slams and 3-run homers. I mean, it was, it seems like it's only been just a week, but it seems like a lot longer than that, that Detroit Tiger fans had to deal with K-Rod, man. That was worse than riding the Rapids. I mean, that was, I think it was riding the Rapids, but you knew at the end, I mean, there was going to be a waterfall. It was going to fall off at some point. So you're right. I mean, we knew that was inevitable, that they would go to somebody else. And the weirdest thing about baseball is that, everybody looks at how guys have done, their track records, or they look like what kind of prospects they were. And you can do a pretty decent job at figuring out, what kind of player a guy, or what kind of season they're going to have, except when it comes to the bullpen. Seems like with the bullpen, I mean, you can have a strong arm, and yet the guy isn't suited for the 9th inning, and you just have to find roles, and we've seen it in different years with different teams. Guys step up. Yuri Hara with the Red Sox really hadn't done anything prior to that, where you'd think he'd be some lights-out closer. And I know the Giants had this is the guy that shut him out, the Tigers in the 2012 World Series, Sergio Romo, right? I mean, that guy, he was another one. They just find some of these guys sometimes, and K-Rod had a pretty good track record, but and he started slow last year, but now it's been a little bit of time where you look at Justin Wilson, he's got closer stuff, but the problem is that it's been a decade long, mostly. I mean, Valverde was good that one year, 49 for 49 in save situations, but for the most part, I mean, this has been the bane of Detroit Tiger fans' existence. They probably should have won a World Series. Certainly should have advanced in the playoffs a little farther if it wasn't for the bullpen. And they've had. If you had one GM, you could just say, "Well, it's Dombrowski. He just couldn't figure it out." But now Avila doesn't look like he could figure it out. Same thing with the manager. I mean, second manager. So it's you wish they could go out and find somebody that specialized in bullpens. There was some kind of like bullpen whisperer or something, but those guys don't exist. And these guys that are in there right now, they can hang in there. I don't think it's going to be a strength.
That's an understatement.
Now you're going to say, oh, wow, now they just get to the playoffs, they're all set. They've got Justin Wilson, but the offense is so good, or potentially, with guys coming back here, it looks like it's a pretty good offense, and it looks like it could be a pretty good rotation too, especially when you have a good 1-2 punch at the top with Verlander and Fulmer. That this bullpen doesn't have to carry them; they just can't, blow it up and be the disaster that that we all expect being Tiger fans, because we've seen it for so many games and so many years here. It's you can tell it's frustrating. And it is frustrating. It's going to be frustrating for them, too. But I like Wilson on Saturday night. I mean, he looked pretty good, striking out the side. And now he's got the homestand. It's going to take, back on a couple of weeks where you feel like, they're not, such a drag on the team, where, they can actually be something positive for them, like with Justin Wilson striking out the side on Saturday night. And, the enthusiasm and the belief in the Tigers would skyrocket if they were able to get to, let's just even say, June, and it's not something that is causing you nightmares on a every other night basis.
Now, do you think K-Rod is salvageable, or do you think it's time with the Tigers is winding down?
Well, I think that he's probably done. Although I think that. They could probably use him for maybe a month in some spot situations, but I don't think so. I think that when you have your fastball is probably 89 miles an hour, and your changeup's 87. There's not a whole lot of variety. You could be as crafty as anybody ever, and he's crafty. I mean, I love K-Rod, man. He's thinking man's closer. He knows what every guy. He knows right where the pitches are supposed to be, and he can get out there, and he knows what he's supposed to do. But I mean, when you're throwing one pitch 89 and then to keep them off balance, and you're coming back with something 87, that's not much of a gap there, and I just don't see that working out for him. So I think it might go for maybe another month or so, but when I look at the bullpen, there's 7 guys down there. You can't hide guys all the time. I mean, they can do this with K-Rod, this dance for a little while, and they will, because they're doing it with Anibal Sanchez, who shouldn't be on the team. But, I mean, that's they unfortunately are going to wait until the crowd, boos them off the field for a couple times, which could happen, this week if he's out there in some kind of situation that's relatively close. It's not going to be good, and, he's going to go out. It's going to be, unfortunately, at this point, probably, to a nasty scene at Comerica, but, they have him on the team. They owe him, $22 million, so they continue to dance with him. But you can't have 2 of your 7 guys down there that are not reliable, even if you have a good closer. So they got to sort that out, and that seems inevitable. It seems like inevitable to me that Sanchez, I'm not going to make any predictions because I thought he would be done a month ago, but here he is still on the team. But every time he pitches, I think, oh, that's it. DFA, and they haven't done it yet. But, that's at some point just going to go over the falls. And I think K-Rod's got a little bit more shelf life, but not much more than that. I would be surprised if he was on the team after the All-Star break, if I had to make a prediction.
So when we look also at the pitching staff, obviously getting more innings out of their starters, considering how much money they make, is also important. And watching Daniel Norris over the weekend, he had a solid start, minus the 5th inning where he threw 29 pitches. So how important do you think it'll be for the starters to go deeper into games for the Tigers to have a chance to win?
That would be great. I think every team probably talks about that, man. And, the perfect setup is if you could have your, starters going 7 or 8 innings. Jim Leland used to always say, well, when you're going to the bullpen, like when you got a guy heating up and you can go to the Wilsons in the 8th and 9th inning, and you feel like that's strength, or your guy gives you, at least 6 strong, and you got a 3-run lead, and you're going down there for the 7th, 8th, and 9th. But yeah, when you got to start bringing those guys out, especially this bullpen, I just talked about the depth. I mean, at the bottom, how would you feel if Boyd went out there against the O's and just allowed 1 run over 5 or 6 innings, but then they're only up by a run or 2, and you got to depend on either K-Rod or Anibal Sanchez, and it's just not sustainable. But I think what Fulmer and Verlander can do, and you're not going to have every guy out there that's going to be able to go 7-8 strong, but it looks like Fulmer and Verlander can, and then you start getting to the X factor of whether this team really is going to be competitive for the long haul. And they paid Jordan Zimmerman. I mean, you mentioned how much money, they're getting paid. Jordan Zimmerman's getting paid almost as much as anybody, and, right now...
He hasn't been good.
No, it doesn't look good. So much so as, people are saying that, they're saying that he looks like Anibal Sanchez from last year, but, you're not ready to go that far with him, but he was always going to be the X factor heading into this year. He's still the X factor. The 4 and 5 guys there, sometimes, Boyd and Norris, man, those guys look a lot better than, just first or second year guys. So feel pretty good about that. I think the X factor still is Zimmerman. You'd love to be able to go to the bullpen with a lead most times, but it's still, as it looks now through 6 weeks into the season, that it's still going to be Zimmerman as the gigantic X factor, and the depth. If you're only able to go 4 or 5, and you got to go to the Tiger bullpen, they've got no depth down there. That will equal, no matter what kind of teams you're playing. That's going to equal just being a 500 team where they're at right now. So either they find some more bullpen depth, or they get these starters to go a little bit farther. I think they're going to start scoring more runs now that the lineup's healthy. So, there's that. But I think every team would like to see their guys, give them an extra inning or two. But that's what's going to separate whether the Tigers are going to be able to be in it in the American League Central and in the American League overall. I mean, all the way through pitching depth.
Now, you mentioned X factors, and certainly getting J.D. Martinez back is an X factor on offense. I'm just wondering if you can tell me the impact you think his return will have on the lineup.
Well, I think, it stretches out your lineup. When you start thinking about, you could sit down. I'm sure Brad Ausmus has done this. Now, he hasn't shaken up his lineup very much, but, if he was filling up the lineup card this week, he could say, wow, I could put, Ian Kinsler leading off. I think if J.D. Martinez was not hurt in spring training, that I think he would have not Nicholas Castellanos. I think it would have been J.D. Martinez who would have been, in there at the number 2 spot. That's where I would bat him. And then you got Miguel Cabrera hitting third, and I would move Justin Upton up to 4. That's 4 strong bats. And then you got Castellanos. You start moving down the lineup there. That's a pretty strong 1 through 5. And then, Vimar, whoever's playing center, whoever's playing catcher, and then, Iglesias 9. That's a strong lineup. But I forget maybe about J.D. Martinez. It was just 2 years ago. I mean, the guy almost hit 40 home runs. So, that swing that he hits, he takes the front arm swinging. He takes the ball the other way like you saw Miguel Cabrera do. I mean, he reinvented himself. And, this is a guy that hit 38 home runs 2 years ago. I mean, he's 29 years old. He's got a big contract hanging out there. I mean, that's a gigantic bat. I mean, it's amazing in some ways that Alex Avila stepped up and talked about a doozy. I mean, nobody saw that coming. They could have easily gone the other way where you're like, man, they miss him so much. The guys that were in there for him for that 6 weeks did a fantastic job. But he's proven, and now it stretches out the lineup. And the Tigers are a team that's just, they really got to hit home runs.
Mm-hmm.
For their offense. They're not creating anything.
Otherwise, they don't win. If they don't.
No, they don't. So, and now all of a sudden you got somebody that can hit it out every time, and that just between him and Cabrera and Upton and Castellanos, you start feeling pretty good that not every one of those guys is going to click every night, but you feel good about a situation where one of those guys, like J-Up, could get hot, carry him for a little while. We know that Miguel Cabrera could do it. You can't really pitch around those guys. And, they should be – if they're top 3 in run scoring right now, and they've missed a lot of these guys. I mean, where can they be when they're healthy? You think they could, vie for the top spot offensively. They should do that. They should – when other teams below average or average pitching is out there, they should be blowing them up. Now, they weren't able to do it. All of a sudden, they run into that guy with the Angels, and everybody thought, they were going to, score 20 runs, and they only scored 1 in the first inning, and that was it. So that's baseball. But, yeah, I think the lineup, the sky's the limit for them. I think they could be the best offense in the American League with J.D. Martinez back.
Now, lightning rod, anytime you talk about the Tigers, is Brad Ausmus. Obviously, he's on the final year of his contract, and I think if he doesn't make the playoffs, there could be a lot of changes, both as manager and in the lineup. But can you just give me your thoughts on where Brad Ausmus stands in the organization? I know that there are a lot of people in the organization that still like him, but certainly you have to have results if you want to stick around.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could make a case that even in his first year that they may have wanted to move. They may have wanted to move on after some of the decisions down the stretch, and then against Baltimore in the postseason there. But you get credit for getting to the postseason, but then you look at it and you say, all right, maybe that was a rookie manager, but year 2 didn't go really well for him. We know what happened last year. Coming right down, missing it by essentially a game. I didn't think it ended up being a little bit more than that, but I think that we saw it in the off season. They're trying to cut their top payroll in the game. They were having a for sale sign, and Maben was the first out the door, and I think they would have dealt one of those big contracts if they could. Now, if they don't get it done this year, Brad Ausmus might be the least of their problems. They may start looking to break this thing down. It feels like that it's kind of do or die for everyone. This era, I don't want to get sounds like
sentimental,
grandiose, but it seems like this is really their last chance here, considering they almost sold everybody off last year. So, yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of veterans that they still have some players here that have some value too. Yeah, they got to make the postseason. I think for everybody, I mean, they've got the district Detroit going up, and that's going to start attracting people here in the summer. We know that the Wings and the Pistons are going to be playing across the street there. If they could, if they could bridge the gap, getting to September where you've got people flocking down there, and it would mean everything. So if they fall short, I think that you'll have a drastically different looking team. I could make, like I said, I think Ausmus could have been gone, after his first year. So I'm done predicting about whether he's going to be back or not, but you can make a great case that, he won't be if they don't make it. You can make a case for almost every guy on that roster, everyone, maybe except Fulmer, that, could be had if this team doesn't make it, at least in the postseason.
Well, I tried that, and no one wanted a big contract, so we'll see how that works out. But I have one two-part question for you to end this. In terms of getting healthier, and as the Tigers get their players back, I'm wondering how big you think their ceiling can be going forward for the rest of the season, and what are some X factors that have to break right for the Tigers to make an extended run at the playoffs this year?
Well, the X factors, I think, real quick, would be Jordan Zimmerman, who we talked about. If they could get a third guy in the rotation that could give them 7 or 8 innings, suddenly you start looking at playing the Twins, who I know are in first place, but I don't expect that to continue on. Nobody does. White Sox, Royals, I mean, they're playing those teams, 19 times apiece. So what are we talking about there? 57 times. That's a lot of what should be victories if you got 3 strong guys in your rotation, and then of course, I mean, we all know that the bullpen would be an X factor on this team. So I would start with Justin Wilson, and I'd go right down the list. Alex Wilson, Shane Green, those would be the top 3. That would be the X factors. But Wilson looks pretty good. Both of the Wilsons do. So if I had to just put it on one guy, I would look to Shane Green. I mean, he's got the stuff. If he can start throwing strike one and he can start locating a little bit better, he's got the arm. Then suddenly you're talking about 3 guys that you could depend on, and they're able to bring up some of those guys from the minors and get Sanchez out of the picture, probably K-Rod, and bring up Joey Menez or Bruce Rondon or whoever down there that could give them a strong inning, and you would think one of those guys could be able to come through and contribute for them. So I'll give you all kinds of X factors. If I had to go with 1 out of the 7 guys down in the bullpen, I'd put it at Shane Green right now. If I could put an X factor at Toledo, I would put it at Joey Menez, because he's got stuff. Could be a shutout guy for you, and there'll be a real leverage guy. I know he hasn't shown that yet, him or Rondon, but I would pick Menez. And then, with the offense, I think the offense would just be fine. I think an X factor would be looking at it, center field still. Romine's done a really nice job, and Latook and Jacoby Jones. I mean, the rotating guys that are in there, if they could find somebody that to do what Romine's done, maybe it will be Romine. Maybe he'll be, the surprise guy. I'll just put center field, a big X out there for this team.
So, what do you think their ceiling is? How far do you think they can go this season?
Yeah, well, I think they can. You know what? Since I think they can vie for the Central against Cleveland. We've already seen that it's not going to be like last year, where the Indians are going to dominate them. You know, through they only played them 18 times. That's not going to happen. They've already won 4 games, so they should be able to get into the second half and meaningful games in September. I think the ceiling is winning the Central and maybe winning a round. I don't, unless they make some trades, it'd be hard for me to sit here and say their ceiling is the winning the American League and getting to the World Series after what I've seen thus far in the last couple of years. I don't think that, but I think that they could. I think the ceiling is winning the Central and maybe getting to the American League Championship Series. Now, if I had to predict, I wouldn't predict that would happen. It's not that I don't hope it happens. I like watching the Tigers. Like I said at the start, going down to the games, and it would mean everything for the area there with what they, got coming across the street with the Little Caesars Arena. But crazier things have happened. I think they'll fall short of getting into the postseason. But so the ceiling, ALCS. That's where I would put it.
Well, that's a high ceiling, but we'll certainly see if the veterans can make one final run at capturing what this whole group was supposed to do in the beginning. But Dennis, we want to take a few minutes to thank you for your insight and for your perspective on some Tigers baseball, and thank you for joining us this afternoon on the Two Man Advantage podcast.
Anytime you want to call, I'll be here.